There are 61 brawlers with a hypercharge in Brawl Stars, so I will be ranking all of them from the worst all the way to the best with our very own tier list. This will give you guys an idea on which ones you should be prioritizing to buy and which ones to not get excited about if you unlock them. Have fun with this video, and let's go. Starting the F tier is going to be Jean's Hypercharge. The super pull is a lot quicker, which takes away the ability to attack the enemy while they are being pulled. There is also no reason to pull multiple enemies at once because it is basically suicide. This Hypercharge literally nerfs the brawler and it is definitely the worst. Next in the F tier is Pearl's Hypercharge. So what this does is that Pearl's super leaves a burning area behind that deals damage. But Pearl's super knocks you out of it, so it makes no sense. It needs to be changed or reworked soon, otherwise it will always be in the F tier. Next up is Nanny's Hypercharge. This one is terrible because most of the hypercharge is wasted in your super, and the stat boosts are terrible. It doesn't provide any value and it's not worthwhile getting. Next up we have Miko's Hypercharge. This one isn't the worst, but it takes a long time to get, and Miko's super in general doesn't provide much value, and the hypercharge is very underwhelming. So for those reasons, it's one of the worst. And lastly in the F tier is Sprout's Hypercharge. So all it does is leave a burning bush that damages enemies if they touch it. But the problem is no one will even get close to, so it's quite useless. It's only good in Heist, but Sprout isn't a Heist brawler. I don't think I have ever dealt damage with it, and it's just terrible. That's the F tier done. Now on to the D tier. Starting off the D tier is Carl's Hypercharge. Firstly, I think this one could be a star power instead of a hypercharge. The rocks won't do much unless it's a stationary target like the Heist safe, and they don't even burn like his gadget. It just does add much to his super, and I think it's D tier. Next in the D tier is Brock's Hypercharge. So even after many buffs, it is still one of the worst in the game. In competitive play, you will see the pros click their super, then their hypercharge for the stat boosts, because the hypercharge super isn't very good. Hypercharge super doesn't provide much value, and it's definitely D tier. So next up we have Charlie's Hypercharge. This one is pretty bad because the spiders do literally nothing. The only situation that they might be useful is to tank a few shots from snipers, but it's still terrible. Next in the D tier is 8-Bit's Hypercharge. So another hypercharge which is very lackluster. This one doesn't provide much value, except charge a bit of super. It barely does any damage if it connects, which it rarely will. Most of the time you will put it behind a wall because if you put it out in the open it will get destroyed very quickly. The only good thing is the speed boost, which is good for 8-Bit. But outside of that it's pretty useless. So now we have Tick's Hypercharge. So all it does is the head travels quicker and leaves mines behind when it explodes. But the problem is, no one is dumb enough to walk into the mines. The hypercharge charge rate got buffed recently, but it's still very underwhelming. And that is the D tier done. Now on to the C tier. These hypercharges can be good in some situations, but they still aren't that good. First hypercharge in the C tier is EMZ's Hypercharge. So what it does is that it gives a little knockback and a little spray of damage, which doesn't do much. The knockback can be useful against assassins, but it's not that great. It's basically just an extra gadget, and I don't really like it. So now for Fang's Hypercharge. The Hypercharge super itself is pretty good, but the thing is that it takes so incredibly long to get it. I think you need like 4 supers to charge it, and you will be lucky to get one in a game, and against good players you will never get it, so it has to go here. So now we have Daryl's Hypercharge. The Hypercharge super itself isn't great, but the shield boost and speed boost make it worthwhile. Especially because you can tank so much damage and make so many more plays. You can cycle through supers quite quickly with the Hypercharge, but it does no extra damage, and it's only good for the stat boosts. Next up we have Primo's Hypercharge. So again, the Hypercharge super itself isn't that great. It's more to do with the stat boosts he gets. The extra speed and shield can help him a lot. But the Hypercharge super is terrible, so it's just not worthwhile getting. Next in the C tier is a new Hypercharge in Hank. A lot of people are saying that it's really strong, but I don't think so. It needs a lot of open space to get value, but Hank is not good on open maps, so it will be hard to get his Hypercharge. But if you play him on close range maps, his Hypercharge won't do much. It does have a lot of team wipe potential in the right situation, so it can be good, but most of the time it will struggle, and I'm not a big fan of it. Next up is another new Hypercharge in BO. This one allows you to put 5 mines instead of 3, and they do not override existing mines on the map. This hypercharge is kind of a hit and miss. Sometimes players will run straight into them and you will deal a lot of damage, but good players will be able to avoid them. So it's good in lower trophies, but as you climb higher, it will become less and less effective, so it has to be C tier. So now we have Squeak's Hypercharge. So this one is very inconsistent. Sometimes you can get a really good Hypercharge super that can change the game, but most of the time the extra super lands way across the map, not even affecting the play, so it's only good for the stat boosts. So next up is Shelly's Hypercharge. So one of the first ones, the Hypercharge Super, is very boring and blank, but you can cycle this one pretty quickly and get some value out of it, so it can be effective sometimes. Next in the C tier is Poco's Hypercharge. This one doesn't provide too much value because the shield dies out so quickly. If you use your Hypercharge Super on someone with max health, you are basically just wasting your super. With that said, his Hypercharge cycles very quickly, and you can get 3, 4, or even 5 a game, so I have put it C tier. Now next up in the C tier is Angelo's Hypercharge. This one is actually really good and it allows you to remove where you want. But the problem is that it takes so long to charge that you will rarely get it. So for that reason, it's in the C tier. So next we have Colt's Hypercharge. So just like Shelly's, this one is very boring, but the extra width in the Hypercharge Super can help you hit more of the shots. And the stat boosts are also really good, and they help him in game modes like Heist where Colt can deal more damage. And lastly, in the C tier is going to be Spike's Hypercharge. So another Hypercharge that is just a bigger super, which doesn't add to much value. It can be good for area control in Brawl Ball or Hot Zone, but there are just better Hypercharges out there. That's the C tier done. Now onto the B tier. These ones will be good in some situations, just not as good as the A or S tier Hypercharges. Starting off the B tier is Mandy's Hypercharge. Now some people are saying it's very good, and it can get a lot of team wipes, but I think it's very inconsistent. Sometimes you will hit multiple opponents and cycle supers, but most of the time it won't hit anything and it will take a while to charge it up again. You can one-shot tanks with it, but you will not be getting that close to tanks with Mandy anyway. It's still a strong Hypercharges, but it's slightly overrated. Next up is B's Hypercharge. So B's super spawns an addition row of Bs that have extra range. This is so good for confirming slows, and you are able to slow 2 or 3 opponents down. Then, she has her Hypercharge Big Sting Shot, which deals north of 6,000 damage. This Hypercharge has a lot of use cases, and I think it makes her a much better brawler. Next in the B tier is Belle's Hypercharge. This makes her super home in on enemies, so you won't miss it. But her Hypercharge super is already pretty easy to hit. I find the stat boosts are what makes this Hypercharge worth it, and I get a lot more kills just from that damage boost. So now moving on, we have Rosa's Hypercharge. The Hypercharge super itself isn't great, but the stat boosts, the shield, the speed, the damage makes her unstoppable in Hypercharge form, and she also has the slow effect, which helps her close the gap with enemies, so it's a good Hypercharge. So now we have Jackie's Hypercharge. This one is very scary to play against. The slow on the super is great to stop the enemies from escaping. The stat boosts are also good, and you can make so many plays with it. It's a very solid Hypercharge. So next is Cordelius. So what it does is that it slows the enemies down a lot in the Shadows realm, and you can get that free kill. So it's very good, but it takes a while to charge up and it doesn't have the team wipe potential that a lot of the top Hypercharges do, so it's alright. So next in the B tier is Gale's Hypercharge. So this used to be one of the best in the game, but with the recent nerfs to the charge rate for both his super and Hypercharge, it has really hurt Gale a lot. It now takes forever to charge like Fang, and you rarely get it in a game. The Hypercharge itself is very good, but the charge rate is the big problem. Next in the B tier is Piper's Hypercharge. When Piper actives her super, she drops more bombs and knocks back enemies where she lands. This is very useful and you can make many great plays with this. The extra damage boost is also very nice. I find I get a lot more kills because of this Hypercharge, and it's definitely worth buying. Next up we have Bull's Hypercharge. So this one can tank so much damage, and it allows you to charge at any opponent and deal a lot of damage and cycle to your next super. It has a lot of team wipe potential, and it makes Bull a much better brawler, so for that reason, it has to be B tier. So now we have Crow's Hypercharge. So the super itself isn't anything special, Many people think that it will get many crazy team wipes, but a lot of the time it is very lackluster. But in Heist, it is a game changer, and it can deal 50% of the heist safe. So it has to be higher up because of how much damage it can deal to a stationary target. So next in the B tier is Maisie's Hypercharge. So you can get some crazy team wipes with it because of the extra shots that come with the Maisie Super. So the reason why Maisie was so broken in the past was because of her hypercharge and cycling abilities. So the reason why it has dropped down is because of her supercharge rate nerf, which has affected her hypercharge, but you can still get some crazy team wipes. So next hypercharge is Otis Hypercharge. So with this hypercharge, the super will stun opponents on impact to mute them like normal. There was a bug with this that has now been fixed, so it is working properly now. It also charges in only 2 supers, so you will be getting it quite frequently. It is a fantastic hypercharge and has made Otis a better brawler. So next up is Ruff's Hypercharge. So Ruff's Hypercharge gives any brawler on your team their hypercharge when the power cube is picked up. It mechanically seems broken, but it can be really awkward sometimes to use, at the correct timing when your teammates need it. It takes a lot of coordination with your teammates and a lot of the time it can go wrong. And lastly in the B tier, we have Tara's Hypercharge. So this one only takes 2 supers to get, and it's just a higher Tara super. That might not sound like much, but the bigger super can pull multiple people and leads to many team wipes which can change the game. Even though Tara isn't the best brawler, her hypercharge definitely makes her better. That's the B tier done. Now on to the A tier. First hypercharge in the A tier is Barley's Hypercharge. I think this is very underrated because it does a lot of damage and the area control is insane. It's so good in Hot Zone and Brawl Ball where Barley can control key areas. It's the reason Barley is meta right now, so it's a very strong hypercharge. So now we have BB's Hypercharge. So when you hit a hypercharge bubble, it will split off into 2 bubbles, so this one can do so much damage, put so much pressure on the opponents and make a lot of game-changing plays. Also, the shield and speed boosts are so good on BB and make her a monster in hypercharge form. Next in the A tier is Nita's Hypercharge. This hypercharge is great for forcing the opponents back and wasting their ammo. It can put the opponents in an uncomfortable situation when used correctly. It can be a game changer in game modes like Hot Zone, and it is broken in Heist. It's great hypercharge and definitely A tier. Next is Jessie's Hypercharge. Similar to Nuts, this hypercharge is very good at wasting the opponent's ammo and taking control of key areas on the map. It also cycles very quickly in less than 2 supers, so you will be getting it quite frequently. Overall, it's a solid hypercharge. Next up is a new hypercharge in Mr. P. This one allows him to have 2 porters at one time, and they get buffed. This is very annoying for the opponents to deal with, and it is a complete game changer. Once you get it, it will be very hard for the opponents to regain control and you will just overwhelm the enemy. It does take a while to charge though, so that's what's stopping it from being S tier, but it's still very strong. Next in the A tier, we have another new hypercharge with Barry. This is another underrated hypercharge that people are sleeping on. It doesn't feel like anything crazy because most of the time you are using it to heal up your team instead of going in. But in the right situation like in Hot Zone or Gem Grab, you can get so much healing and cycle through it so quickly. So in competitive, it's at least A tier. So next up is Stu's Hypercharge. So this one takes a very long time to get, but it's worth it because you won't get crazy team wipes. But you can get so much mobility and pressure on the opponents, can be game-changing. So it's definitely a good hypercharge. So now we have Colette's Hypercharge. So the reason why it's so good is because you can cycle it so quickly. If the spirit hits someone, you instantly get your super back so you can deal more damage. It can deal 20% of the heist safe. And of course, it destroys tanks. So it's a strong hypercharge. Next in the A tier is Edgar's Hypercharge. When this was first released, it was broken, but as the metas have evolved, is slowly dropping down. The hypercharge itself is good, and you can get many team wipes, but it takes a while to charge because of how bad Edgar is. It's a solid hypercharge, and it makes Edgar a better brawler. Next US is Sandy's Hypercharge. So the reason why it's so strong is because the hypercharge basically lasts the whole Sandy super, and you teammates get that speed boost for the full duration of the super. The mute is also great as well as the stat boosts. It does take a while to cycle though, but it's still a very good hypercharge. So now we have Buzz's Hypercharge, so you get infinite supers as long as you hit a wall. So you can make so many great plays with this, like traveling across the map, and you can also stun lock people if they are near a wall, so it's a great hypercharge. So moving on, we have Penny's Hypercharge. So this one doesn't sound great, but it is. It gives you so much area control, and it can do much chaos. On certain maps and scenarios, it will pop off for you, and the enemies won't be able to take it down, so it deserves to be this higher up. Next, in the A tier, we have another new hypercharge in Eve. This one is really strong because you can spawn so many hatchlings on the map and it can just overwhelm the opponents. And if you use the mythic gear, you can spawn even more. The only downside to this is that it can be hard to build up the hypercharge against good players because they can dodge Eve's attack, but other than that, it's really strong. So next is Leon's Hypercharge. So whenever he uses his super, he stays invisible, even if he attacks, which mechanically is absolutely broken. It has received some small nerfs in the charge rate, but it's still broken. The damage output is insane. You can get so many kills and cycle your super, so it's insane. Next up is Gray's Hypercharge. It's basically a Gray super, but it stays on the map infinitely, and it gives you 1000 HP shield. This is very strong, especially when paired with tanks. You can just put the supers on the hot zone or the gem mine, and your tanks can keep spawning through them with a shield. It's very versatile, and definitely worth buying. And finishing off the A tier is Janet's Hypercharge. Ever since she revived her Hypercharge, it has shot her up the meta, and for good reason. It allows her to hit more bombs and deal so much more damage. It also allows you to cycle to another super and sometimes another Hypercharge soon after. Her Hypercharge charges in only 2 supers, so you can get 2, 3, or even 4 a game. It's a very fun and strong Hypercharge. That's the A tier done. Now on to the best of the best, the S tier Hypercharges. Starting of the S tier is Lau's Hypercharge. Lau's Hypercharge is so strong now because of the reload speed buff he received an update ago. You are able to hit more shots and cycle supers and hypercharges faster. An instant freeze is so good, especially since you can throw it over walls and surprise people. It can disrupt supers and other hypercharges and give you a log of area control. It's very strong. Next up is Mortis Hypercharge. So the bats come back to you when you throw them out. This gives you double the heal, double the damage, and double the chance to survive and get kills. This has so much team wipe potential. All you have to do is line up 2 people with your super and you will get another one. It's very strong and makes Mortis a much better brawler. So next up is Surge. So whenever he is in hypercharge form, his attacks will split, and when he uses his super, he will get additional range, so you can deal massive amounts of damage to the opponents. The stat boosts are also insane, and all of this combined can lead to many team wipes and kills, which can change the game, and it's an insanely strong hypercharge. Next up is of course going to be Dynamic. So what this does is adds extra damage to the bomb, then it explodes with little dynamic sticks that deal more damage and charge super. The team wipe potential is insane, and you can cycle 2 or 3 supers inside a single hypercharge. He also gets his hypercharge very frequently, so it's absolutely S tier. So next in the S tier, we have another new hypercharge in Ashe. So the reason why this is so strong is because there is a bug with him. They lets him extend the duration of the hypercharge by dealing damage, which of course is very broken. Ashe also gets a speed boost, a big shield boost, and the rats itself are very strong and can deal a lot of damage, as well as charge Ashe's rage bar. It's very good and has made Ashe a top-tier brawler. So moving into the top 5 hypercharges in the game, starting off with Frank, so when he uses his hypercharge, his super will go in a 360 around him. This is a crazy ability. You can hit so many people and the stat boosts, especially the shield, are crazy. He gets such a strong shield that it's impossible to kill him in hypercharge from, and he can cycle the hypercharge 3 or 4 times a game easily. Of course, it's not always the best to open up a map when you're a Frank, so it might hurt him in that sense, but it's still a great hypercharge. Now moving into the top 3, starting with Rico. His hypercharge is completely busted. The bullets will keep bouncing and bouncing and they would be unavoidable. The bullets will keep hitting the enemies without you even knowing. The team wipe potential is through the roof and this hypercharge will get you so many kills. He also cycles it very quickly, which means you can get multiple team wipes without needing much skill. It's definitely top 3. And the silver medal goes to Max. This one is very broken, because if you all group up together when she uses her hypercharge, Super not only will you get that insane speed boost, but you will all charge 75% of your supers. This just leads to your team overpowering the opposition so you can make that decisive move to win the game. And the best hypercharge in Brawl Stars goes to Melody. The reason why it is so good is because it stacks onto her star powers and gadgets. So if you have 6 notes circling you, you get that 36% boost in movement speed, and on top of that, if you are running the interlude gadget, you gain a 60% shield. You are so fast and so tanky, and you deal so much damage, so it's easily the best hypercharge in Brawl Stars. And that is every hypercharge in Brawl Stars ranked from worst to best. If you enjoyed this video, I recommend you to watch this one right here where I rank the best 10 brawlers in Brawl Stars. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.